Think about it. You don't have the bench press in the Olympics. How does that make any sense? Because it's freaking stupid with the rules is what's going on. Coach Greg, and today I'm going to be talking about powerlifting. As you can see, I got my singlet on. I used to be a very competitive powerlifter. I actually have world records in the bench press, and I had a Guinness Book of Record in the deadlifts, stuff like that. So I know a lot about the bench press and the sport of powerlifting, okay? Recently, it's come up that the bench press has gotten out of hand. I mean, it really has. People are getting away with bench pressing without even bench pressing. You think, what do you mean? Well, I mean that some people are able to arch their backs so far that they don't actually have to bend their arms to lift the weight. So I'm watching a video by Candido Training HQ where he went in detail why the bench press rules should be changed, and I 100% agree with this, despite the fact that I actually have a world record in the bench press, and that I took every advantage of the rules to do so. I think the rules, they need to be changed. It's time for a change. Let's watch this woman bench press, and you tell me what you think. So she literally unracks the bar, holds it up there, arms are straight, touch your chest, and you just stick your chest out a little bit. The bar is touching the chest. Pause and press it up. Deflate your chest a little bit, and done. You bench pressed. Think about it. You haven't even bench pressed the bar 1 inch, but you successfully bench pressed 300 pounds and you're a 100-pound female, for example. Does that make sense? Is that a true test of what we're trying to do? The sport of powerlifting is to see who is the strongest person. Notice, what's a more popular sport? Strongman competition or powerlifting competition? How many of you know Brian Shaw, world's strongest man, versus how many of you know any powerlifting champion? Eddie, name one. How many of you know these people? You probably don't unless you're very explicitly involved in powerlifting. Why is that? Because powerlifting hasn't gone mainstream. You don't see powerlifting competitions on TV. It's just not that interesting. And frankly, it's because the rules are stupid. They need to change. People don't respect powerlifting the way they do strongman, even though to me, powerlifting is an amazing sport and more people should do it. Not only do I like powerlifting, my girlfriend was a competitive powerlifter for years. She's actually in the back eating breakfast. So babe, come here. I'll ask you a question. So what do you think about the rules of the bench press? Does it make sense, the arching, and like, what do you think about all that?
Well, I mean, I like a good, nice arch, but it can be a little ridiculous. I mean, if you're barely moving the bar.
So let's show her a bench press. You see if this is barely, let's see.
Depending on the bench press competition rules, at the first, your hip has to attach to the seat and your elbow has to be straight. My bar has already attached my chest, so I call this no range bench press, also zero bench.
So how do you like that bench?
So she literally didn't even move her arms.
She said zero bench. Is this zero range of motion on the bench press?
She literally slid her butt up, which made her chest go up. And that's how she bent.
So imagine you're 3 feet tall and you bend over to pick up the weight off the floor and you stand up straight and the bar's bending and you're standing locked out with the bar. Hey, I just bench pressed 5,000 pounds.
Deadlifted.
I mean, it has to come off the ground. There should be some form of movement to see who's the strongest.
Yeah.
The bench press should test out to see who's the strongest. I got a proposal. I'm agreeing with these guys. I've been thinking it for years. I'm going to go in detail, say, what would solve this problem?
I believe the bench press rules in powerlifting should be changed. And I disagree with a lot of USAPL and IPF lifters, people on Reddit forums.
So the problem is no one wants to settle for how much they can lift right now. The sport of powerlifting was started and people lifted raw. They just went out and bench pressed, deadlift, or squatted. But then sooner or later, people are like, oh, I know, if we wrap our knees, we'll lift more weight. Or if we wear a squat suit, it's really tight, we won't be able to bend down as far and we'll lift more. Or I know, let's put on a bench press shirt. It's so tight that the bar can hardly even be lowered to your chest. This thing, I've literally seen people with 500 pounds and try to lower it to their chest and they can't lower it. They can lift it, they just can't touch their chest. How stupid does that sound? I did these sports. I could lift a ridiculous amount of weight just by throwing the shirt on. I hated it. I hated doing it, but that's what the world's become. We have a slingshot. The slingshot, you put this on, you can bench press 50 or 100 pounds more. Why? Because it's stretching and you can push it up. So imagine somebody comes up to you and says, hey, what do you bench? And you're, oh, 500. And you're like, wow, that's incredible. But it's 500 with one of these or with one of these. Is that really how much they can bench? Meanwhile, you're thinking, geez, I can only do 400. They can do 500. How come they're so strong? But you're stronger than them. This is how the sports become ridiculous.
A lot of times the way this argument goes is someone posts an extreme arch bencher like Sean Noriega, who we'll have on this video. Then people trash talk him, which is very stupid. That's caveman behavior.
And what's happening is people with very impressive arches, they're setting world records, posting the videos and saying, look at me, I just set the world record. And all the comments are, you suck, you're a cheater, you don't bench press, that sucks, let's see you do a real bench, and so on. Meanwhile, they're following every single rule to the letter. They're not cheating, it's not their fault, they're allowed to do so. It would be like saying to a Mr. Olympia bodybuilder, oh, you cheated because you're not natural. And you're thinking, yeah, but I'm allowed to not be natural. How is it cheating? It's the same thing. You're following the rules.
Most of the lifters who say rules are rules and it just is what it is, and it's the public's fault for not understanding it, are the same people who advocate for raw powerlifting. That's the reason why most of us are in this sport now. Powerlifting is the ultimate test of strength. The 3 lifts are disciplines that test human strength, and it is the best competition to measure this. This is straight from the IPF's About page. So they explicitly say they are for testing strength. Those who say it is an arbitrary sport are wrong.
So just think of how ridiculous it is. I would argue that the bench press is the most popular lift in the world for people who lift weights. Everybody has tried a bench press. You ever gone to a gym and you've never bench pressed? Everyone knows what a bench press is. Why is it not more popular? Everybody runs. Do you know how popular the 100-meter dash is in the Olympics? Arguably the most popular event in the entire Olympics. How is the bench press not an excessively popular mainstream event in the Olympics that everyone would want to be part of it? Does that make any sense? How can arguably the most exciting lift that everyone likes to do not be glorified in the Olympics? I sure would have liked that. Think about it. You don't have the bench press in the Olympics. How does that make any sense? Because it's freaking stupid with the rules is what's going on.
The 2 ways to go about this is either the IPF should stop marketing the sport this way, they should cut all of that strength talk out if they're not going to adjust anything to that, or they should adjust to make sure that each lift is demonstrating strength.
So you're thinking, yeah, but rules are rules. And I'm thinking, no, rules are made to be adapted, to be broken, to be changed for the better. In baseball, the games are dragging too long, so they shorten the time that the pitcher has to pitch between pitches. Or if there's 500 relievers in a baseball game, let's only allow 1 or 2. Let's stop the sport being ridiculous. In basketball, they have a 24-second clock. You can't just dribble around all day, hiding away from the other players. Changes are made for the better of the sport. Changes need to be made to sport of powerlifting now. Not next year, not in 10 years, right the frig now. And it's an easy change. They could adapt right away. Simple.
Let's get straight to the solution. Narrowing grip width by weight class.
As it stands right now, those of you who've done a bench press, you might notice some markers. They're about 32 inches apart from my recollection, okay? To do a successful bench press, you need to cover those rings with your index fingers, okay? So what do I do to maximize my bench press? I grab as wide as I can right on the external rings and I internally rotate my arms so that I can widen my grip even more. My fingers, I literally twist this way so that when I bench press, I have the lowest range of motion possible, okay? If I grab close grip like this and try to bench press, I can't bench press as much because the bar has to travel a lot further. So to get stronger, what I did was I kept grabbing wider and wider and wider, twisting inwards so that the bar only had to move 10 inches for a bench press. I ended up breaking the world record because I maximized technique of the lift. Yeah, I'm pretty strong, that's true, but the strongest people also need good technique to break world records. You need both.
I believe this is the best solution initially because it's gradual. It's addressing something that's prevalent as well.
Why should a 100-pound female be able to bench press with the same grip as Brian Shaw's 400 pounds? Think of it. The smaller female has a grip this wide, and Brian Shaw is so big, it only looks this wide to him, relative to the size of his body. So different grip widths should be allowed depending on the class. Keep it the same for the big guys, 200 and something pound guys. Shorten it so that the middle finger has to be on the ring for the middleweight guys, like under 200 pounds. And then the smaller lifters, like under 150 pounds, let them put the pinky on the ring. All you have to do that, and it's fair for everyone. The arches would remain, but the bar would have to travel further because no one is doing a zero motion bench press with a grip width that's closer. When your hand grip is closer, you have to lower the bar further, allowing more elbow bend, and it looks like a more realistic bench press. Gone would be the comment saying, "Oh, what is that bench press? The bar never moved. That looks ridiculous." And it would become more likely to watch and cheer for this sport because people wouldn't say, "That is ridiculous." Imagine in the Olympics, somebody wins the bench press and doesn't bench press. They just stand there and go, "I win." It wouldn't work. Changes need to be made.
Let's hear from the man who gets the most hate in the entire United States for his bench arch.
So they asked Sean Noriega to take part of this video, and in case you don't know him, he arches like crazy. He can bench press over 500 pounds, but he has an incredible arch. So a lot of people will judge him and say, "That's not a real bench press, that's not fair." But he's playing by the rules, of course it's fair. But if they forced him to grab the middle finger on the ring, his bench press max would drop dramatically. Rather than him bench pressing 500 plus pounds a few inches, he would only be able to bench press, say, 450 pounds, but for a few inches more, and it would look like a much more realistic and attainable bench press that other people can relate to. I myself am used to this. I bench press as wide as possible. Now imagine, I'm a manlet, but I'm still over 5'6" tall. Imagine if I were only 4'6" tall. The shorter you are, the more advantage you have to bench press wider. When bench pressing with the widest grip possible, you only have to move the bar a few inches. So if you have the shoulder flexibility, the shoulder strength to hold the bar there, and your wrist is able to bend that way, you can take every advantage of this lift and bench press far more than you could with a narrow grip. Okay, so basically, get your scapulas together, hands as wide as possible, wider than the rings, and then internally rotate, stick my fingers out, cover the ring, chest up high, butt touches the bench, unrack, and this is all I have to do to start. Pause and press. This allowed me to set world records in the bench press. Had I have been forced to bench press with my middle finger on the ring, I would have bench pressed probably 20 to 30 pounds less, but with a greater range of motion, which would have been more appealing to the mainstream media who wants to see people who do normal bench presses like people do in the gym trying to build muscle. So it's as simple as this. Rather than allowing people to put their index finger on the ring, for lighter weight classes, you have to tell these people, no, it's the middle finger on the ring. It's a small rule change. Lighter weight classes, you put the pinky finger on the ring. This will immediately put a halt to all the flack that bench pressing is getting on social media with people who have extreme arches who aren't actually pushing the weight. They're literally not bench pressing, they're just getting the lift to count. They're not lifting any weight, they're holding it there, but it's legal because technically, according to the rules, that is an allowable bench press. We don't want that. Rules are meant to be changed. When you see a stupid rule, talk about it and make it change. Kind of like when Good Life won't let me go to the friggin' gym without registering in advance, and then I'm always on a stupid weightlift and can never get in. Sucks. Rules are made to be adapted. There's no one in the gym anyway in the afternoon. Let us go friggin' train. Ending it here. Hopefully you like this discussion on powerlifting and the bench press. I don't often do these. However, I was into powerlifting for over 20 years, sport that I love. And so, yes, blooping up 2 videos. Be sure to watch one of those. And follow me on TikTok, Instagram, buy my training book, cookbook. And until next time, I am out.